Well, welcome in, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. It's so nice to have an audience coast to coast across Canada and the US and all the way out in Hawaii with our amazing speaker today. My name is Jesse Hildebrand. Welcome back to another awesome year here at Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. It's our first big epic week. We have had programs with some of the coolest scientists and explorers on planet Earth, and it is such a privilege to get to welcome in the new school year with some epic adventures. If you haven't checked us out before, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. And for our audience, both live and on YouTube, you are joining us on a very cool day because we are beginning a nice partnership with the RV Kilo Moana. Oceanographer and National Geographic explorer Katlin Adamczyk is joining us today from the ship off the coast of Hawaii, where they are exploring the abyssal plain, one of the coolest ecosystems on this planet. So she's going to take us on a little bit of a boat tour. We are going to get to meet some scientists. We are going to, fingers crossed, for a good connection inside the ship today. Wish us all luck. But I'm so excited to introduce Katlin. Thank you so much for joining us, and take us away.
Everybody, thanks for joining. My name's Katlin, and I'm an oceanographer. I work for US Geological Survey, so I'm a government scientist, and normally I work in Santa Cruz, California. But for the next month, I'm here on board the RV Kilo Moana. We're currently in port in Honolulu, Hawaii, hopefully soon going out south to the deep ocean, which is one of my favorite places on the planet. So we've been in Honolulu in port setting up the ship. It's been a pretty busy week. We have to send all of our equipment and all of our supplies all the way out to Hawaii. So I live in California, but we have collaborators that are here from Japan. We have people from the East Coast, people from all over. And here's a little video of us doing our mobilization. So from my office, we were able to shipping container with all of our gear. So all of the equipment that we need to do our science gets moved on board. All right. So we're studying a really deep part of the ocean called the abyssal plains. And the stations that we're going to be working at are 5,000 meters deep, which is about 3 miles, or if you like to think in terms of school bus lengths, that would be the length of 400 school buses. So it's a really deep part of the ocean. There's no sunlight. It's really cold. It's really dark. There's not a lot of food, but there's a ton of life there. There are really special animals that are able to live under those conditions. And the part of the seafloor that we're studying has what are called manganese nodules. And these are really special rocks that form over millions of years. And so in the seafloor, when you have soft, muddy worms that like to live there, and sea cucumbers, and then you have rocks on the seafloor, you get different types of animals like corals and anemones, animals that need something hard to anchor to. And so this part of the seafloor that we're studying is really interesting because we have that soft, muddy sediment with worms and cucumbers, and then we have those hard rocks too. And so we have a lot of biologists on board. I'm actually sitting in the biologist area, so you can see some microscopes behind me. That's not a real sample, that's a giant plastic bug. But we have biologists that are looking at animals that live in the water out here, animals that we find in the seafloor. And then I'm a chemist, so I have some supplies on the other side of the lab, way in the back, to look at the chemistry of the pore water that's in the sediment. We have lots of geologists on board. We have a really cool rock saw out on deck, so once we get the nodules, we're going to cut them in half and see if we can find out what's in the middle, look at different layers. So it's a really collaborative, diverse team, all different types of science that are coming together to study the seafloor. So Jesse, if you want to play the ship tour video.
I can't wait to play the ship tour video because it is quite the tour. So you can walk us around as I bring this up, and we'll go on a little adventure together.
Yeah, let's check out the ship. Here's me outside. I made this for you guys yesterday. It was nice and warm and sunny. There we go. All of the hallways look the same. I get lost sometimes, as you saw there in the video. This is the galley where we eat all of our meals. So we have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. There's Annie. She's one of the awesome stewardess that cooks us good food every day. Lots of cookies and good snacks. This is some of the lab spaces that we're working in. We were just out on deck looking at some of the equipment. I'm going to walk back there and give you a closer look. This is my stateroom. So I get to share a room with my friend Hope. We have bunk beds. We share a bathroom with 2 other girls on the other side of the hallway. My favorite part about working on a research vessel is you can be walking down a hallway, you walk out a door, and then all of a sudden you're out on deck. You just saw some life rafts. This is the bow of the vessel. It's a double-hulled vessel, so it looks a little different than most boats, but it's designed that way to be more stable, and that helps us map the seafloor. These are just some creative foam blocks to keep us from hitting our toes. And that's a giant winch that controls the over-the-side equipment. This is a cold laboratory, so the deep ocean is really, really cold. And for people studying animals, we don't want to bring those animals up to the surface in the warm Hawaiian temperatures. It can kind of give them a little bit of a shock. And so we have that special cold lab where we bring the mud in, we sort out the animals, and we keep that nice and cozy at a cold temperature that they like. Those animals also aren't used to seeing light. So you saw the red lights in the video. We can turn off the white lights and use those red lights for us to see, but it's less of a shock to the animals that are used to the deep, dark ocean. All right.
Fantastic, Caitlin. Well, I want to note too, we've got a whole bevy of classes from all over Canada and the US on our YouTube channel. We got an amazing group with us from North Bay, Ontario in live. Do you want to take us in a little bit of a tour and hope that the connection lasts inside, or what's next?
Yeah, do you guys want to meet some of my friends?
We'd love to meet your friends. The more
Okay, so I'm going to take a little walk. All right. I think we can go out on the back deck. So we're at the dock now. They're doing some stuff outside where we needed to be out of the way. But I'm going to see if they're done. So in that ship tour video, you saw a big metal thing. That's what we use to collect mud from the seafloor. So 5,000 meters is way too deep for any human to go swimming or even scuba diving. And so on board, we have a lot of different tools that we use to get all the way down to the bottom of the ocean and collect our samples of mud and water. And so first I'm going to walk back to my friends Pete and Dan, and they help with something called a box core. It's a big piece of metal frame that we send down to the seafloor to collect our dirt. And next, after that, we're going to visit my friend Cheryl. And so Cheryl is a biologist, and she's interested in learning about the animals that live in the deep parts of the ocean. And all the equipment we use has cameras, so we can take pictures. But in order to take those pictures, we need a light. And the light can scare away some of the animals. So what we see in the pictures isn't everything that's there. It's only the animals that weren't afraid of the light. So Cheryl, I think of as a detective, she collects DNA from the water and then looks at that DNA to try and understand what animals that we may be scared away. To the back deck and see if we can chat with Pete and Dan. So I'm on the main deck of the ship now. We're going to go outside. So no, okay, we're going to go to Cheryl instead. So we're out on the back deck now. Hopefully our connection is still good. We are coming back into port in Honolulu to do some more work on the vessel. So we can't hang out on the back deck too much. We're going to go back in this hangar where our CTB is. Hi! Say hi.
Hello, I'm Cheryl.
Hi, Cheryl. And
I'm Julia.
awesome. Let's duck inside a little bit more. Maybe come on the same side just for sound. Okay, so these are friends I was telling you about that are like the deep sea detectives. Can you tell us how you learn about animals from collecting water samples?
Yeah, it's really exciting work. So we use these bottles here, Niskin bottles, to collect water. And organisms that are in the sea basically shed DNA into the water. And so we capture the water, we filter it, and then we sequence that DNA and we compare it to references. And from that, we can detect species that were close by when we had these bottles of water. And so these are all species, from little tiny organisms to phytoplankton, the base of the food chain, to invertebrates like jellyfishes, which are really common in the sea out here, and shrimps and lobsters, all sorts of invertebrate species, as well as fishes, all sorts of fishes, and up to marine mammals. We've detected dolphins from just sampling water.
Wow. Do you guys have a favorite deep sea animal?
Oh my, it's so hard. I really love swamp lobsters. They're these little tiny crab-like creatures that live in specific areas. Some of them live on corals in the deep sea. Some of them live at chemosynthetic sites and or cold seeps. And some of them actually swim around. So they're a really diverse group and they're very interesting looking. They're really cool. How about you, Julia? Fish. It's really cool. They're an interesting looking fish.
Just a quick note, sorry to interrupt. Get a little bit closer because it's hard to hear you over some of the stuff happening out on the deck.
They're telling me it's loud, hard to hear.
Okay, sorry.
We were talking about the favorite deep sea animals. Tell us your favorite deep sea animal one more time.
Okay, I love squat lobsters. They're a really diverse little group they're crab-like organisms that live specifically with corals or cold sea habitats, certain habitats on the seafloor. And they're very diverse. There's lots of species and we're still learning about them, so they're really exciting. My favorite is the rat-tailed fish. If you look them up, they're very interesting looking fish.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Maybe we can find a quieter place to go next. There's a lot of activity happening on deck right now. Let's see if I can go this way. Oh, this is fun.
I must say, though, pretty cool to be coming into port in Honolulu. Lucky you. What a gorgeous day and gorgeous spot.
It is. We just had a giant rainbow. Let's see if I can squeeze by. All right.
I like this. Dodge the activity on the deck.
Just trying to stay out of the way. Now is the time when the crew has to do their thing, and as a scientist, I just have to stay out of the way.
Well,
how's it sound in here?
It's a lot better right now. This is perfect.
Okay.
Amazing. Well, we've got a first question, and what we might do is if there's more places you want to show us, we can walk around, but we can take a few questions from our audience as well as we dive in. Does that work?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Lovely. Well, first and foremost, we got how long you're on the ship. You showed us some of the places you get to stay and sleep and everything else. When you go out on expedition, how long are you actually at sea?
This expedition is 3 weeks long. I would say a short expedition has been 10 days. My longest expedition was 65 days long.
Wow.
So that's over 2 months long.
So when you're out doing that, do you make all sorts of new friends? How many people are on the ship with you at any given time? It sounds like quite the adventure.
Yeah. So on this vessel, we have 17 different scientists, but we also make friends with the crew too. We're working really closely with them, especially as we're putting stuff over the side. You make lots of great friends, which is one of my favorite parts of this job. I actually had dinner with a friend who works in Hawaii, and he and I met probably 10 years ago on a big research cruise that was 2 months long. So you make new friends when you're doing this type of work, and then if you're lucky, you get to keep working with them. And then it's kind of like a big reunion when you get to go to sea together and travel to places like Hawaii together.
That is certainly pretty special, something that we hear from a lot of oceanographic adventurers. So thank you for sharing that. I'm going to head to our class, Miss Saunders' class, grade 3-4s in North Bay. If you want to come ask a question to Katlin, come on up and take us away. Hey, guys.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Katlin. What did you take in school?
Yes, great question.
Can you repeat the question for me? I lost you a little bit.
Yeah, the question was, what did you take in school? What should our grade 3-4 students be thinking about doing to end up as cool as you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I studied environmental sciences in school. And so I did an undergraduate degree in environmental sciences, and then I did a PhD in environmental sciences. And I really liked chemistry, so I took as many chemistry classes as I could. But I mentioned all the different teams on board. A lot of people went to school for biology or microbiology. Even if you like math or physics, there are plenty of jobs in oceanography and technology too. We get to use some really cool robots to study the deep sea. So my path was environmental science, chemistry, but all different types of science and math pull into studying the ocean.
It's one of the coolest things about a vessel like this, because there are so many scientific jobs, and then there's technicians, and then there's cooks, and then there's people that are organizing it all, business people, whatever. So if you're keen on epic adventures like this, you do not need to necessarily have a one pathway to get there. You can be like Katlin, or you can go on a variety of sort of career itineraries to end up on such an amazing ship. So I'm really glad we got that question. We got a class in Stratford. They want to know something you've talked about a little bit, but talk about the different scientists on different experiments on the ship. So you mentioned a few different disciplines. Is it the same group of scientists every time? Do you have different kinds of people that come on? Do you get to collaborate with one another? Just lay out the science that happens on the Kilo Moana.
Yeah, it's a little bit different. So there is a small team on board this expedition that I worked with a couple years ago. It's a team that looks at worms in deep sea mud. So I collect the mud and I look at the chemistry. So I collect the sediment and the water in the mud, and I measure the pH and the temperature and what elements are there. And then my friend Amanda looks at all the worms that live in that mud, and we can share information and kind of work together. But most of the other scientists on board this expedition, I've never got to work with before. So it's new people. I work for US Geological Survey, and so we have a lot of our team from USGS in different offices around the United States. But we also have a team here from Japan. I'm sitting at their station now. They're the crew that brought the microscopes. We have a scientist from Scripps in Southern California. So I would say maybe a quarter of the people I work with on a vessel I know or I've worked with before, but oftentimes you're working with new people, and it's really fun to get to work with people from all over the world too. We had some very nice gifts from a student that's joining us from Japan. He brought us matcha tea and snacks. So it's fun to get to meet and work with people from all different places of the world, learn a little bit more about their culture and how they do science.
Listen, fresh matcha tea from Japan is one of the great joys in the world. So if you get to have that in your collaborations, that is very cool. And I'm so glad you talked about this. That's one of the coolest things about science that we get to feature so much in these broadcasts, is that when you become a scientist, you get to work with the best and brightest people from a truly global body of countries, right? Like whether it's Russians, Japanese, South African, Chilean scientists, people come from everywhere to collaborate on these amazing adventures. And so thanks for sharing all that today. That's awesome. We're going to head back to our North Bay crew. If you guys have another question, come on in. Hey.
Hello. Hi, my name is Carter. Have you ever been in a storm before?
Ooh, any storms, Katlin?
I've been in a lot of really big storms. I was in kind of the outskirts of a hurricane. You know how they do those maps, and red is where the hurricane is concentrated, and then it goes to yellow, orange, and green on the outskirts. I was on a boat in the green area, which was pretty wild. I was working on the back of the ship, and I had a little window in my lab. And so outside the window, when the boat went like this, all I could see was sky, and then the boat would tip down on the wave, and all you could see is ocean. So really big waves. When we get stuck in storms like that, the safest thing to do is often to get away from them. So we kind of stop our work and we move away from that storm. Sometimes we even come all the way back into port. So I've had a couple expeditions that we had to cut short due to bad weather. We were trying to get away from it, but there was nowhere else to hide. So the safest thing to do is go into port. I bring special high boots and rain gear. It's kind of fun when you're in storms like that. It's like a big roller coaster water splashy ride, and so I like to put on my rain gear, my rain pants and jacket, and just go out on deck and safely experience a little bit of the storm.
You are one of the only people to ever mention the fun of a storm at sea, so thank you for that perspective. We have a lot of explorers come on, and they find it quite the opposite. I've been in 4-meter swell before, and it is the sickest I've ever been in my life. So you are a greater adventurer than I. Kudos to you for handling that. Ms. Cork's class on YouTube, they wanted to know, do scientists need to bring all their own equipment? If you're coming on, do you have a bunch of gear that you have to pack, or is there anything on the ship for you when you arrive?
Yeah, so the CTD I showed you, where we're collecting water for DNA, that lives on the vessel. So the vessel has some tools that we can use, but the box core that we're using for this expedition to study, to collect the sediment, that's something that we brought on board. And then the lab, I mean, it looks like a cool science lab behind me, right? But when we showed up, that was just empty benchtop. So all the computers and microscopes and equipment that makes this look like a lab, all of those things we brought on board, and even some of the big equipment that we use to study the seafloor we bring on board. When we work with submersibles and robots that study the seafloor, oftentimes those come on the vessel. But everything in the lab, packing for an expedition takes months. And that's one of the most important steps, because once we're offshore, we can't go to the hardware store. We can't call a friend to bring us something. So we put a lot of time and energy into packing for an expedition to make sure we have everything that we need. And then if something breaks, we need to know how to fix it too. We need to have the tools to fix it. So a big chunk of work for an expedition is just packing all of your bags.
It's been some of the funniest footage we've ever featured of people just getting ready for expeditions, whether land or sea or anything else. So I'm glad you mentioned that. You talked about the submersible. Before we go to our next question, I just wanted to follow up and see, is this a manned submersible? Are you going down in this? Or is it all just robots? And how far down do they go?
Yeah, Cheryl, have you been in Alvin?
Yes, I have actually.
So Cheryl and I have both had the opportunity to dive in a human-operated submersible, and so it's pretty tiny inside. Oh, and Charlotte too. We have three science divers.
Oh my gosh!
So we've all had the opportunity to do a dive in Alvin. Do you guys know how deep Alvin can go now?
6,500 meters.
6,500.
Oh, we froze there for a second.
Control room, and you get to.
You're back. Sorry.
Are we back?
You froze for a second, but that's amazing.
Okay.
Keep telling us more. 6,500 meters. Yeah.
Yeah, 6,500 meters. So I dove at a methane seep where there were bubbles coming out of the seafloor. What kind of places did you guys get to dive?
I got to dive on a deep coral reef area off the Blake Plateau, kind of mid-U.S. East Coast. Also methane seeps and an underwater mountain, seamount.
Underwater mountain diving. It's my dream to go to a hydrothermal vent in a submersible. Those are where you have the hot fluids coming out of the seafloor someday.
So I've got to say, for the three of you, on behalf of our classes who may not be familiar with Alvin, that as someone who grew up following exploration, Alvin is the coolest sub on Earth. It's the coolest of all scientific tools on the planet, and you are so lucky. The number of people who've been in Alvin and in submersibles is in like the low hundreds, maybe a few thousand now ever in history. So the coolest science people on Earth are on this ship, and thank you for sharing some of those stories. That's amazing. So
yeah, of course.
A great follow-up to this from Miss Brown's class. They're joining us in Albuquerque, and they want to know, what's the most beautiful thing you've ever seen in your exploring? No pressure.
What's the most beautiful thing?
Yep.
I know, I have to think. Okay. I got to go to the North Pole, and seeing sea ice, I think, was one of the most beautiful things I've got to see. I was at the North Pole at a time where the sun doesn't set. So when you kind of look out at the horizon, all you see is white sea ice. And then the sun just kind of circles the horizon like this. You never see it set. So it felt like being on a different planet. And it was, yeah, it was beautiful. Do you guys have a favorite, most beautiful thing you've ever seen at sea?
I think mine was in Glacier Bay National Park in Alaska, and we dove on these sheer walls of the fjords, and there were sea fans, these big red tree coral sea fans that were just covered the whole wall. And so we just got to take a remotely operated vehicle and take a trip down this big, huge mass of sea fans, and there were fishes swimming in the sea fans. It was just spectacular. How about you?
I'd say very similar. Flying over the seamounts in a submersible, it feels like you are gliding. It's like a forest. You see incredible colors. I had the chance to drive a little bit, to drive the Alvin. So yeah, feeling like you're part of this other world. It's so peaceful, dark, but also colorful and full of life.
What an awesome answer. Thank you three so much. And what a cool question from Miss Brown's class. That was amazing. We're going to head back to North Bay. We've got time for a few more questions, folks. And if you two need to go in the background, by all means, it's so nice having you on. We'd love to have you stick around, but if there's science to do, don't feel obligated. North Bay, come on back, guys. Hey.
Hi, my name's Sandra.
Thank you.
Have you been ever scared on a ship?
Could you repeat that? Sorry.
My name's Sandra. Has you ever been scared on a ship once?
Oh, ever been scared on a ship before? Great question.
Have I ever been scared on a ship? I don't think so. We do a lot of training to stay safe on board. So we were offshore yesterday, and as soon as we went offshore, we had an emergency fire drill. You probably have fire drills at school too. So we do things like that where we practice and we learn what to do in an emergency. Someone always knows where we're at, so we can kind of track vessels with GPS. If there's a fire on board, I know where all the fire extinguishers are. There's 2 exits in this room. So wherever I'm working, I know how to get out. I have all of the emergency safety equipment around me, and I have the crew that supports.
Oh, we cut out again briefly.
Okay.
You're back.
Are we back?
You were mentioning the crew was supporting.
Yeah, so I always feel really safe at sea. I don't feel scared because I know I have the crew to help protect me and the scientist, and we know how to handle emergency situations that might arise.
So I'm so glad you mentioned two things in this, because for our students, I think when I was a kid, I always assumed that explorers like Katlin were fearless and never had any challenges. And quite often when we have people that are at the cutting edge of science and exploration, they are afraid, but they prepare, and the team around them prepares too. In anything out there, whether it's space exploration, ocean exploration, or anything else you can conceive of, so much preparation goes in to think about any scenario where things could go wrong and to make sure that the necessary precautions are in place to make sure that it doesn't. So I'm really, really glad we got that question. That was awesome, guys. Thank you. Katlin, do you have time for two more questions before we wrap up? Amazing.
Yeah, let's do it.
So Miss Crew wants to know, does the ship go out all year round? Are you constantly on the go, or is there a season where you hang out in port?
Yeah, there's usually a season where you hang in port. So just like you have to take your car in for an oil change, get your tires rotated, ships need a little love too. They try and stay out most of the year, but there's usually at least a month or two period where they're in port just doing maintenance. It's a pretty big vessel. This vessel is, I think, about 190 feet long. So it's a lot of boat to take care of. So I think there's one or two more expeditions on this boat, and then they'll be done for the year.
Fantastic. Great question, guys. And thank you for that. This is true of pretty much every vessel we've ever had on. So I'm glad when we can get a question that's applicable to every oceanographic exploration. We're going to wrap up with one more from our awesome live crew. Thank you guys so much in North Bay, and take us away. Hey, guys.
Hi, my name is Luciano. What do you do after you catch the fish?
That's a really good question. What do we do after we catch the fish? I'm a chemist, so I'm going to ask my friend, what do you guys do once you catch the fish and the animals?
That's a great question. In many cases, we only catch photos if we just need to know what it looks like. But sometimes we do need a piece of the animal's body. We need to study its DNA. It's something we've never seen before. We need to take it back for experts. So I also work on invertebrates, but this applies to fish. We bring them to a collection. We preserve them in alcohol. They stay in a big room. Their information goes into a database where anyone in the world can search. Oh, that kind of fish, that's my favorite. I want to work on that. So we loan them out. It's like a library. In that way, we were the first people to see them, but they're accessible to everyone. So collections like this are really important, making these samples available to everyone, even if you're not on a ship.
What a beautiful answer. Thank you so much for that. Katlin, before we wrap up, is there any last message you want to share with our kids today about being on the Kilo Moana, about your experience before we say goodbye to everyone today?
I'll just say thank you guys so much for joining. I love being an oceanographer. I love going out to sea. If you're excited about that, you think you might like it, I encourage you to try it. Like we were talking about earlier, you can study all different types of science to become an oceanographer. I forgot to mention my friend Peter helped me make those videos. Peter's a full-time science communicator, so he's really good at writing and taking photographs, and he routinely comes out to sea with us and out in the field. So if you like what you saw today, if you're interested in maybe going to sea someday, know that there are many different pathways to get there, and just follow whatever you find interesting, whether it's science or writing or engineering. Follow what you find interesting, and maybe someday you'll find yourself on a vessel like this.
Katlin, there is no better wrap-up message than that. Do stick around for when we're done live, but I'm going to bring in our North Bay class to say thank you and farewell. All our YouTube classes in Albuquerque, Stratford, and beyond, thank you so much for joining too. Have a wonderful day, everyone. And bye for now, guys. We'll see you all really soon. Thanks, everyone.